Isn't that awesome? That's Heather Lynn. Those of you who are listening around the world, across the country, and maybe even on the space station.
I need to let everyone know that I, along with two other artists who work with bread, will be playing tomorrow at the community center. I think it's that way, at 1:30 in the afternoon. Oh, it's that way. Okay. Yeah, I don't know the area. So the community center here in town, we will be playing at 1:30 tomorrow. Is that everything? Okay, great.
That's everything. Fantastic. Thanks, you guys. Thanks. You know, it seems to me that one of the important contributions of events like this is they're really the ability to create a soundtrack and a narrative and a big story that people can be a part of. And many of us in lots of places in our world are trying to do interesting things. And sometimes they're very obvious. Sometimes they're very public. And sometimes they're quite simple. And it's easy to think that your simple thing is not as important as those bigger things. It really is. I don't know about the rest of you, but when I was going through the booklet here for the Wild Goose Festival, and I'm reading all the bios on everybody, I'm like, good grief, all these people are like really big-timey and like world changers and really important. Anybody else have that feeling? Like you're sort of like, God, I don't even think I have a bio like that writes up like that. And then you realize everybody's making their way, right? Everybody's doing their part. And it really matters that we listen to each other and that we have as many outlets as one can possibly have. And so my encouragement to all of us at the Wild Goose Festival is to know that your contribution and the person that you don't know their name is helping to create something collectively and together. So the other day I was walking by and I saw Joseph. Joseph, I'm going to invite you up here. And I don't know why I started chatting it up with Joseph, but I was like, "Hey, Joseph, like, what are you doing here?" Those of you who are listening live and don't know, that was a giant garbage truck that just drove by.
It wasn't Joseph.
It wasn't Joseph. Joseph is not a Joseph the garbage truck. And so I said, "Hey, Joseph, what do you do?" And he said, "Well, I live in Vermont." And I said something, I don't know, what did I say about the radio? Somehow I brought up this radio show.
Well, I realized you were a presenter from a conversation you were having, so I said, "What are you presenting?" And you told me about your radio show. And I said, "Oh, yes, I had read it in the program." And I said, "Well, I do a radio show also in Vermont."
Yeah. And I said, "Well, if there's another radio show nerd here, we're going to drag him over." So even in Vermont, where they make great maple syrup and other things. Here you have Joseph. And Joseph, you drove your way down here.
Right.
You spent 3 or 4 days and sort of meandered your way
exactly
down here.
Yep.
Why did you come to the Wild Goose Festival, and what do you do over at WGDR Community Radio out of Goddard College?
Well, I drove down here because I was at Wild Goose last year when it was near Raleigh, and it inspired me to pursue my own journey, both politically and my faith journey, and I decided I wanted to be with people who were on a similar track. I just want to be with you all and go back to Vermont and bring some of this warmth and friendliness and strength back to Vermont.
Yeah, I should say I love Vermont, but Vermont doesn't strike me as the kind of place that's sort of on the edge of new innovations. Is that fair?
Yeah,
or have I misunderstood Vermont?
Well, you've misunderstood Vermont if you're not paying attention to what's happening with health care in Vermont. Vermont may very well be the first state that has universal health care by 2017. We may very well have it. We're on track to do that. So that's pretty innovative.
That's pretty innovative. Being at something like this, is it helpful? Like, do you feel like in your faith kind of pursuits, do you feel a little alone in Vermont?
No, actually, I'm the chair of the Peace, Justice, Integrity of Creation Committee for the Vermont Ecumenical Council and Bible Society. So I work with people who are people of faith from many different denominations, Christian denominations in the state already. So no, I feel very much at home here, and I'm bringing back, hopefully, to those wonderful folks the great energy that I feel here.
So tell us a little bit about your radio show. You host a show called Gathering Peace.
Gathering Peace, peace broadly defined. I used to work for a group called the American Friends Service Committee, and we work on peace and justice issues. So this was part of my outreach when I was the Vermont staff person for the AFSC. And I kept the show after I retired. And we look at issues of social justice and peace, and both locally, nationally, and globally.
It's fantastic. So I asked you if you had some trivia for our giveaway, and you have an insightful trivia. And how about some Vermont trivia?
Okay, well, the so-called insightful trivia is, we all know about Long Ranger and Tonto, but we don't know about the racism that's built into those two names. They come out of the Spanish language. Tonto means stupid, and quien sabe, which is Spanish for quien lo sabe, he who knows. So the Lone Ranger was he who knows, and the Indian Tonto was stupid. So this is a little bit of embedded racism in our everyday entertainment that we never think about.
Yeah.
A little bit of Vermont trivia. How many Congress members in the House of Representatives does Vermont have?
Oh, do you know this? This is super nerdy stuff right here. Really? You know? You already won a book. I know. He's already won one. We're gonna cut you off. Do you know? How many Congress people does Vermont have?
One. Yes, one. We are a population of about 620,000, so that gives us one at-large member. That's why I knew him.
That's why you know him. It's the one guy. Does anybody ever run against him, or is it just like, you get to be the guy till you die?
No, actually, will be his third term coming, so he's relatively new. In Vermont, as in most parts of the United States, we do tend to re-elect the incumbent. In Vermont, it's a little harder, though, because people know you. I mean, I know Peter Welch, right?
So the whole conversation about could you really walk up to your congressman and stuff, you're like, no, you just find him down on the
last time I ran into Peter was on Interstate 89, and he was coming out of the men's room, and I was going in, and we hugged each other before we went on our respective ways.
News flash: Congressman hugs the other man at a rest stop on a highway. Thank you.
Told you Vermont was innovative.
Way ahead of the curve there. Joseph, if people want to listen to your show, can they find it on the internet, or do we have to drive to Vermont and stop?
Well, it would be nice if you drove to Vermont, spent a little money, and stayed. But if you don't want to do that, you can go to wgdr.org. The show is broadcast and webcast live every Tuesday morning from 8:30 to 10. It's an hour interview and a half hour of news and updates and things of that sort.
Yeah. Who do you interview?
Well, I've interviewed people like, as I say, peace broadly defined. So could be the head of our local senior center, or in one case, Helen Caldecott, while she was in the bathtub in San Francisco, ready to be picked up to an airport, and said, "You don't mind, love, if I talk to you while I'm bathing?" And I said, "Of course not." So we had an interview with the water sloshing back and forth in the background. It was very nice.
Awesome. Joseph, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Heather, then before you play, I want to introduce you all to John Matthew. John is from South Africa, and I was bumbling around over in the camping area, and John said hello, and we had a little chat, and he's in South Africa. From Vermont to South Africa, there are interesting things going on, and people who've said, "I'm going to drive to Hot Springs, North Carolina, to be part of this." John, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doug.
A real privilege. It's awesome.
You speak about Vermont. It's one of the areas, one of the suburbs where I come from. It's also called Vermont, yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm from an area of just outside Cape Town, South Africa, about 60 miles outside of Cape Town, a geographical area called the Overstrand, about 150 kilometers. I don't know what that is in miles.
What's going on in South Africa, and what brings you up here? Because when we were chatting the other day, you made it. You kind of just got on an airplane and flew here just to poke around.
Exactly, yes.
Who does that? That's awesome.
I don't know,
Have you ever done anything like this before?
No, never done this before.
Are you married? I didn't ask you this before.
No.
Yeah. Are there people in your life who are saying to you, "John, what are you doing?"
What are you doing? Yeah, they don't understand what I'm doing there. Look, I've been following this emergent conversation for some years now, and reading the books, Brian McLaren, yourself, and others, pretty much in isolation in the area where I live. This conversation doesn't happen. And I just felt that I needed to make some kind of firm contact with people who are in this conversation, so that I can kickstart this thing back in South Africa. Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that. In the age of the internet, where a lot of us, have ways to listen to things on the internet and pass books around digitally and listen to the Reimagined podcast on Spreaker, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Why the need to get on an airplane, fly thousands of miles, and spend 3 weeks?
I think despite all the technology, there's a difference when you meet somebody face to face. You get a sense of who they are, the spirit behind the words that maybe or the photographs, the stills that you see on the internet. You want to sense something of the spirit and the intention of the person. Yeah.
So what's happening in South Africa? We hear things, we hear.
Okay, well, I haven't looked at the news today yet. I know that Nelson Mandela is very ill. He'll probably pass away fairly soon. He's 95 years old, so it's inevitable.
This story's been going on a long time. I was on vacation for 10 days, and I came back, and not to be crass, but I was like, seriously? They made it sound like he was going to die any moment.
Well, it was very critical at one point. It seems he's improved his health. That is one issue. We have a general election coming up next year, so politically things are hotting up, and new political parties popping up. We've got Agang, we've got the Economic Freedom Fighters, which is a kind of radical left-wing party started by a chap by the name of Julius Malema. And he's very militant, and he's got the ear of the youth. So new parties being formed at the moment, other parties not doing all that well. And you see, we have two political parties. We've got the Democratic Alliance, and then we have the ANC in South Africa. But both of those alliances are unholy alliances. So on the ANC side, you have the Communist Party and the ANC together in one party. It's the only place, I think, in the world where you have capitalists and communists in the same political party. On the other side of the scale...
If you know about Barack Obama. There's a rumor of that here, that Barack Obama...
Barack who?
Yeah.
And on the other side, you have the Democratic Alliance, which is made up of the previous Liberal Party, the Democratic Party, and the old National Party, who were the architects of apartheid. So you have these two political parties that actually have within them warring parties or traditional enemies within both of those parties, and so it's quite tenuous as to whether there's the cohesion is going to happen long term. And I think what we'll find down the line is they will unbundle into their real party, so that they'll actually stand. The problem is that they don't stand for anything. Because they have these internal conflicts happening all the time.
Anyway, what's happening on the religious front in South Africa? What's up?
Yeah, as I say, this kind of conversation, not much happening there. We've been infiltrated by American religion quite a lot.
Really?
And particularly the faith of the prosperity gospel has become very popular in South Africa. And I don't know, but I guess amongst poor people it's a very attractive theology, the prosperity teaching. So it's kind of got quite a grip on South Africa. And so we have our own emerging TV evangelists and all of that stuff that maybe...
one of the things that strikes me as interesting with these kinds of global conversations, you begin to realize that we're talking about a really complicated religious, economic, political systems.
Yeah.
And there can be a tendency for some of us to want to simplify that by having the religious side be simple and straightforward, and you know what I'm getting
Absolutely.
at? Everything's so complicated in this big emergence kind of world and this global patterns and all this stuff that, let's just boil it down to the
Give me certainty. Give me certainty
in
these changing times. I just want something. I want a fixed point in the universe, and that offers that. But unfortunately, it's a false sense of security, that it's not really fixed in the universe, that things are moving all the time, and it's very dynamic. I think that
does it seem to you that God, are you comfortable seeing God in that? I'm quite comfortable with thinking about God in terms of complexity and layers and different things happening in different places at different times in different ways. Is that...
Oh, yes, it's a multi-layered world we live in. And particularly in South Africa, you have to bear in mind that there are 11 official languages in South Africa. It's 50 million people with 11 official languages, and that doesn't take into consideration the dialects and sub-languages amongst that. And within the black community, one would assume that the languages are very similar, but they're not at all. The languages differ as much as English from Chinese. So if you see two black people walking down the street, you can't assume that they can talk the same language or even understand one another. And so, of course, we've come out of an era and of course it relates to the theme of Wild Goose this year, of remembering the body. South Africa's history has been dismembering the body. So we have a really dismembered body where the system of apartheid put all of those ethical and cultural groups into kraals, into what would you say in America? Corral. In a kraal, we'd say in South Africa. Sort of herding people like cattle into these corrals. Okay. So, and that's where we come from. The problem is that although we are now a constitutional democracy and have been since 1994, so we're almost 20 years down the line, the penny hasn't dropped yet. The penny hasn't dropped. So most people are still living by that apartheid meta-narrative. They assume that apartheid is still there. The meta-narrative remains in people's thinking completely. And they haven't really understood on both sides. The white community kind of assumes superiority. Right. And the black community assume inferiority. And so there's apathy on the black side, a sense of hopelessness. And on the other end of the scale, there's a tendency for the white community to capitalize on that fact. It's like the emperor's got no clothes, but nobody knows that.
That's awesome. Isn't it great? I mean, just think about all the great people you have a chance to meet that know stuff like this. Just the guy, sitting in the tent next to you. I have a couple questions for you.
Do I get a CD if I answer them correctly?
What you get a CD just for being here from South Africa. Pay for that. When did you get here, and are you over your jet lag yet?
I arrived on Tuesday at about 3 o'clock at Charlotte in North Carolina, and no, I'm not over the jet lag.
So
I'm still
like back home.
In a bit of a stupor
it's
still.
1:30 in the afternoon in North Carolina.
6 hours. They're 6 hours ahead.
So it's ahead. So this is the middle of it.
It's 9 o'clock, I guess, for them.
It's 9 o'clock
in the evening.
Hey, I'm wondering, anybody here planning to go to South Africa? Like you've already got plans to go there?
Come to the Overstrand.
Seriously, you're going to go to South Africa? Are you up for winning a book for that? All right, well, you win a body prayer book. Take it,
Bring it on. Oh.
Yes. Body prayer, Postures of Intimacy with God, available at your local bookstore. And for free right here. So you two should connect, and Ari, you guys should connect when you get to South Africa.
Yeah.
Are you going to go to South Africa? Hey, why don't we all get together and go to South Africa? Should we do that next summer?
Absolutely.
Let
me know.
South Africa We'll put on a Wild Goose Festival in South Africa.
But I must correct you, Doug. Earlier you spoke about all the folk in broadcasting. You didn't mention me. My nose is a little out of joint about that.
Well, you're South African. We can't include everybody.
Okay.
You got to start with the. No, tell us about your radio show.
No. We have as one of the jobs I do in that area is I run the local community radio station, and that's part of our contribution to try and deepen democracy in the area and give a voice to those who previously didn't have a voice. But that's...
I just got to ask you, what are the chances in the same afternoon to run into two people that also run radio shows? It's like everybody runs radio shows. Radio show, it's the future. Radio show and plastics. Yeah. It's the future. Remember that movie? All right. Hey, it's really great.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Heather Lynn has a little song that came to my mind that's sort of about that's not on the CD, but you can find it at Heather Lynn Music, I bet.
My hope's not in economy, not in wealth or in prosperity, not in promises of stability. My hope's not in possessions, not a job or a profession, not the state of corporations. My hope is not in weapons, not in guns or their protection, not vehemence, not in revenge. My hope is in the most it's only just begun. It's only just begun. This is my hope. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My hope is not in government, not the Pope, not the president, not a party, not a candidate. My hope is not in vanity, not in national security, not even moral purity. My hope's not in religion, not in cults or their confessions, not in prophets, so-called heaven sent. My hope is in the most gracious one, the same source of life for all under the sun. My hope lives strong in the freedom of love that's moving, changing, healing, love that's only just begun. It's only just begun. Don't be afraid now. Lift up your eyes. No, I won't be afraid of any brother or sister, 'cause we're all in this together. We gotta walk side by side, put all our prejudice behind. My hope is in the most gracious one, the same source of life for all under the sun. My hope lives strong in the freedom of love that's hope.
Isn't that nice? Really can write a hook. You should meet Danny Schofield. Danny's doing interesting things, lives in San Francisco. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing over there at that at Reimagine and with your Reimagine podcast.
Oh, you want to talk about the podcast?
Well, I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Oh, okay. So I'm a part of a nonprofit organization that runs retreats, workshops. We host storytelling conversations. We just started, with Doug's help and encouragement, a podcast. And we create spaces for people to have conversation that bridges the gap between how we want to live and how we actually live. So we create spaces where people can take on practices, and we study the teachings of Jesus, and we figure out what's an experiment that we can do around what we know about the Gospels. So have to, give one away. We actually did an experiment where people took inventory of their possessions and got rid of half of their possessions.
I like that, have to, give one away. Let's give away a book.
Okay.
So if you want to work in your own life on some kind of practices like this, think of a trivia question. If not, I have a whole list of them. But do you have one yourself to go with?
A practice-oriented trivia? Best, but I have a San Francisco trivia question.
Oh, excellent.
Okay, how much is a one-bedroom apartment monthly rent right now in San Francisco?
Average one bedroom a month rent.
Janelle, you can't answer this because I just told you. About Higher.
What?
Yes.
$3,100.
The average one-bedroom apartment in San Francisco is going for $3,100.
You got to walk up here and get these 2 books. Or
I have rent control, I would like to point out. I have rent control in a lovely apartment where I pay $650 a month, and it is such a godsend. And I live in the best district, the Mission District.
Awesome.
Yep.
So if you want to talk to Danny, who's somehow figured out how to live for $600 a month in San Francisco, and about the other great things she has going on, you should totally do that. Russ, do you want to come up here and tell us about what you got going on in Colorado Springs? Here's the thing. In the most unlikely places, there are really interesting things happening, including Colorado Springs.
Colorado Springs. Believe it or not.
Believe it or not. Actually, Colorado Springs is a lovely place.
It is a lovely place.
My own journey into much of what would be the Wild Goose world has some history in the Springs. But tell us a little bit about what's happening in the Springs now that's going to be fresh in the next couple of months.
Well, my wife Amanda and I are living in the Springs. We've been there just over a year, and I've actually been in church ministry, pastoral work, and music and worship stuff for many, many years. Crossed paths with Doug on more than one occasion in that venue, and then but we're entering a new phase of life, and we're opening up a coffee, wine bar, craft brew cafe right downtown. It's in Colorado Springs. It's about 2 blocks from our house, so a lot of it for us is really embracing the idea of place and being in our community and living that out, and literally our family walking to the shop every day to work, and building community in a really different sort of way. And some of my best friends, even in church ministry from the past, people like Steve Reese, who you know, and Jackie Reese, Doug, have said things like, we really see some of the best years of community and ministry ahead for you guys in the future. So
and what's
really
interesting to some people maybe about your story is you used to work in a big mega church, successful kind of big church, as a worship leader, and now you're going to find yourself 2 blocks from a startup coffee shop, wine bar, craft brew place. And in your life, these are part of still your goal to live out this agenda of God. But to somebody's life or somebody's observation, they would seem so different, right? From Russ Ware putting together Sunday worship liturgies at a big church and singing songs with a guitar to, doing this.
Yeah, but
is it surreal or is it just fabulous?
It feels great.
Yeah.
I can't believe it took us this long to figure it out.
Yeah.
That this is what we were supposed to be doing. And it's interesting looking back on that past.